Jason Lives. I hope no one was worried about spoilers for this movie. The fact that Jason was gonna be back was so publicized, even the title of the movie advertised it. You can't even search this movie on IMDb by typing Friday the 13th. You literally need to enter Jason Lives. Now, even though Part 5 had a good opening at the box office and technically made money overall, there was a lot of fan backlash over that one. People really hated that Jason wasn't the antagonist of the movie, and the plot twist of Roy being the killer fell so flat even the actors, when filming the scene that revealed it, apparently told the director then and there that it was a dud. So the producers had no choice but to take the wheel of the good ship Friday the 13th and do a major course correction to sail back into the safe, profitable waters known as Jason Voorhees. Tommy Jarvis and his friend rushed to a graveyard in the small town of Forest Green to try and find the grave of Jason Voorhees. You see, the Crystal Lake marketing team, in an effort to encourage tourism, renamed the town in order to try and shake that whole "everyone tends to be murdered by a madman" stereotype. The pair dig up the rotting corpse, but the sight of decaying flesh being feasted on by worms triggers Tommy. He grabs a metal fence post and stabs the cadaver. But, in what can be only called the worst stroke of luck ever, a bolt of lightning strikes the post and Jason Voorhees is resurrected. Tommy escapes to the local sheriff's office. His mate isn't so lucky, to try and convince the sheriff that he may have accidentally reanimated history's greatest killing machine, but the officer thinks he's crazy and throws him into a cell. Jason hasn't lost his taste for blood and hatred for all things camp counselor, as he immediately heads to a road to find the couple who have coincidentally just reopened the local summer camp and ends them. A gaggle of horny teens who are helping to run the camp stop by the sheriff's office, since one of them, Megan, is the sheriff's daughter, and get a stiff warning from Tommy that Jason is on the loose. Not wanting anyone to bring up the J word, the sheriff decides to escort him to the city limit and warns him there's a little police brutality in store if he ever comes back. Jason continues his killing spree by taking out some corporate paintballers, a couple having a picnic at night for some reason, the local gravedigger, and of course, a couple of kids participating in the mating ritual. Once the sheriff hears of all the dead bodies piling up in his town, he decides the culprit must be Tommy, going to extreme lengths to convince people of his story that Jason is back, and makes him public enemy number one. His pretty blonde daughter Megan decides hanging out with a delusional criminal suspected of murder sounds like a lot more fun than helping her two friends to try and keep the summer camp running, after the owner never turns up due to a Jasoning, and a swarm of kids have arrived. They manage to collect some supplies for a Jason trap, but are soon apprehended by the police again. Jason finally makes his way back to the camp and soon adds 2 more counselor scalps to his collection, as the police force arrive on the scene. Megan and Tommy escape and head to the camp for the final showdown. Tommy lures Jason into the middle of the lake where he once drowned and chains him to a rock that he sinks to the bottom. Tommy seems to have met his end, but Megan manages to start the boat's outboard motor right in Jason's face and makes the save. We close out with Jason's bloated body still chained to the bottom of Crystal Lake, but his eye is open and twitching, indicating that the monster has been stopped, but only for a matter of time. I said in my first video on the original Friday the 13th that it wasn't what you'd expect if all you knew about the series were the stereotypes. Part 6, however, is where the cheese starts to come on thick and fast. And, like your average fat westerner, I will eagerly consume that thick fatty cheese in whatever quantities you can give me. First things first, Tommy Jarvis. Originally, this was going to be the first movie in a new trilogy, where Tommy was to continue Jason's work murdering horny teens for no discernible reason. But, after the fan backlash over Part 5, the whole plan had to be revisited, and Jason was added back in as quickly as possible. Of course, for those playing at home, this leads to a few plot holes and problems. We saw Tommy go crazy and kill a woman at the end of the last movie, but now he seems lucid, if not paranoid. He has no murder convictions, no explanation on how he managed to sweep that one under the rug, or how he got his sanity back. And he's even painted as the hero of this movie. It was explicitly stated in Part 5 that Jason was cremated, but the first thing we see is the digging up of a corpse in a graveyard. And yes, I know this has a semi-canonical explanation involving Jason's father, but none of that is ever mentioned in the film. It was almost 5 years ago Tommy killed Jason in part 4, so why is his motivation for travelling all the way to dig up and burn a corpse that he just had to be sure he was really dead? If he hadn't come back in the last half-decade, I think the moment had passed. Jason's method of returning is also about as corny as it gets. Yes, there are inconsistencies in Jason's past involving his supposed drowning and recovering from an axe wound to the head, but up until this point, there was never anything explicitly supernatural about things. This movie, however, decides to go for the Johnny Five school of thought, that lightning has the ability to bring inanimate objects to life, and now Jason is a shambling, undead monster, rather than a regular old deranged psychopath. I'm not saying I don't prefer the immortal, unstoppable murder machine, but it is something of an alteration to the so far established character. This is the first movie that includes what you might call an all-out comedic scene when we find a group playing paintball. These guys are annoying, this woman is really on the nose, and this guy is just playing slapstick. But the key here is that no matter how cringeworthy this all gets, all is forgiven when Jason gets the triple pop on the Three Stooges here. And that really sums things up. There are annoying aspects to this movie, like Tommy needing to find supplies in the middle of the night and then just magically obtaining them off screen.
That's what I want.
The annoying little girl who prays to keep Jason away. And the fourth wall breaking comments.
Why'd I have to go and dig up Jason? Some folks have a strange idea of entertainment.
You can't really stay mad when Jason twists the counselor's head clean off, or the sheriff folds like he has the world's worst Texas Hold'em hand. This movie has the cheese and the over-the-top gore that becomes the staple of the slasher genre. It's the one I see given by fans along with Part 4 as being the best or second best entry of the whole series. There is one thing missing, however, the sex. For the first time, there is no nudity in this movie whatsoever, and only one sex scene with two fully clothed teens. Reading about this on various wikis, apparently this was done not because the director was against sex and nudity, but because he thought the message of the movies was becoming too close to, if you drink, smoke and like sex, then you must be punished. And if you think about it, yeah, it is sort of implied that Jason is some sort of divine punishment for giving in to a base urge. Really, in the spirit of what these movies should be, that is, not wholesome entertainment for rebellious teens, that really shouldn't be the message being presented. The kids are standard and boring, but to be fair, they're not the focus of this one. They're just there to serve as victims for Jason. Tommy, Megan, and the sheriff are the characters the movie revolves around, and they do a decent enough job of holding our interest. This is my favourite ending to a Friday the 13th movie. Previous flicks always had to find some way of having Jason stopped, while still leaving the door open to have him come back in future installments. And this ranged to the confusing, like Part 2, where it just didn't tell you what happened, and inconsistencies, like in Part 3 where he gets an axe to the head and then just recovers in the morgue the next day. The technique they employed here builds off the fact that Jason is now full of undead magic and cannot be injured or killed. They just trap the beast under the waves. He's alive and he wants to continue his rampage, but has to deal with a torturous imprisonment befitting his evil nature, fully providing a non-lame way for Jason to return next time. Even so, Tommy acts like the original place of his drowning is some sort of weakness for Jason and his cursed existence. But in reality, Jason has no qualms about jumping into the lake and chasing after his prey. It's not played like the waters of Crystal Lake have any sort of negative effect on Jason, or that Jason fears it, or water in general, in any way. In the end, the result is just chaining him up. You could have literally done the same thing to him in a backyard swimming pool with the same result. But the new canon was set. Tommy Jarvis's setup as the next big bad of the franchise was completely retconned. By the way, this is where Tommy bows out of the series. I guess he now lives happily ever after with his new flame Megan. Jason was re-established from a mentally deranged mama's boy to a literal demon with eerie survivability powers, and is cemented that forever after, he was a star of the Friday the 13th movies. But there just might be other beings in this universe with powers equal to his own, and he might have to fight one of them next time. Stay tuned as we head into part 7.